Aryan baby contest. For years, the most printed face in Nazi propaganda belonged to a Jewish baby girl. The Nazis never found out. In 1935, the regime launched a national contest to find the perfect Aryan baby. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and racial purity. Thousands of photographs arrived from across Germany, and the winner was personally chosen by Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda. There was just one problem. The baby they crowned was actually Jewish. Her name was Hesse Levinsons. She was just 6 months old, the daughter of Jewish immigrants from Latvia living in Berlin, and she unknowingly became the most printed face in Nazi magazines. Her photographer Hans Bahlen had submitted the photo specifically to mock the Nazis. He never imagined she would actually win. When Hesse's family realized their daughter's face was everywhere on Nazi propaganda, they panicked. They fled to France and eventually made it to New York. The regime that built a genocidal system to eliminate every Jew in Europe used the face of a Jewish baby girl as the symbol of its ideology. For years, without ever knowing it. Hanfstaengl prank. In February 1937, Ernst Hanfstaengl, one of Hitler's closest friends, boarded a plane convinced he was flying to his death. He wasn't, but Hitler made sure he believed it for every single minute of that flight. Hanfstaengl had studied at Harvard and had been close to Hitler for 15 years. He had introduced Hitler to Munich high society, lent him money, and helped shape the movement from the inside. That morning, he boarded a plane in Berlin, convinced he was flying to Spain on a secret mission behind enemy lines. As the plane climbed, the crew started giving updates. Enemy lines approaching. Prepare for the jump. Hanfstaengl completely fell apart. He tried to bribe the pilot. He begged. He was certain he was about to die. Then the plane landed. It had been circling over Germany the entire time. Hitler and Goebbels had arranged the whole thing as a prank to punish him for criticizing German soldiers. Hanfstaengl never forgave them. He fled to America and spent the war writing daily psychological profiles of Hitler for Roosevelt. Roosevelt called them his Hitler bedtime stories. The man who helped build Nazi Germany spent the war helping America destroy it. Hitler's sweet tooth. Hitler, the most feared dictator in Europe, had the sugar habits of a 10-year-old child. He was completely addicted to sugar. 5 teaspoons in his tea, cream cakes whenever he wanted, cookies, and up to a kilogram of chocolate pralines in a single day. He constantly ordered his staff to leave a special apple cake with raisins and nuts on his bedside table every night he ate alone after everyone had gone to sleep. Even during the planning of the invasion of Norway, aides reported that he kept abandoning military meetings to go eat sweets in his study. He claimed sugar calmed his nerves. In his final days in the bunker, with Soviet artillery shaking the walls of Berlin, his cooks baked cakes one after another, and Hitler gorged on them. Hitler was an obsessive film buff. Hitler watched 2 or 3 films every evening in his private cinema without exception, and nobody could disturb him. On D-Day, this habit changed the course of the war. He was obsessed with American films. Snow White was his absolute favorite. He watched it multiple times and declared it one of the greatest films ever made. He loved Laurel and Hardy, Mickey Mouse cartoons, and Greta Garbo films. The man trying to destroy America could not stop watching its movies. But here is the detail nobody knows. On June 6, 1944, when Allied forces landed in Normandy in the largest military operation in history, Hitler was asleep. He had stayed up late watching films. His generals knew about the landing. They had the reports on their desks, but nobody dared wake him. He had given strict orders not to be disturbed for any reason. By the time Hitler was finally informed, critical hours had already passed. Hours in which the Germans could have responded to the landing. Hours lost forever. Hitler's nephew. Everyone knows Adolf Hitler, but very few people know that his nephew ended up fighting against him during the Second World War. William Patrick Hitler was born in Liverpool and was the son of Hitler's half-brother. In the 1930s, he moved to Germany hoping to take advantage of his famous uncle's rise to power. He expected a privileged life, but their relationship deteriorated quickly, and William even went as far as threatening to reveal embarrassing family secrets if Hitler didn't guarantee him a better position within the regime. Hitler ignored him. William left Germany and started speaking publicly against the Nazis. He moved to the United States, gave anti-Nazi lectures, and wrote articles warning Americans about his uncle's regime. In 1944, he wrote a personal letter to President Roosevelt asking permission to enlist in the American military. Roosevelt granted it. William enlisted in the United States Navy, fought in the Pacific, was wounded in action, and received the Purple Heart. After the war, he changed his name, moved to Long Island, and spent the rest of his life far from the shadow of Adolf Hitler. Protected Jews. Hitler, the man who built a genocidal system to eliminate every Jew in Europe, personally kept 2 Jewish men alive, and nobody could do anything about it. The first was Eduard Bloch, an Austrian Jewish doctor who had treated Hitler's mother for cancer years before the war. When Germany annexed Austria in 1938, Hitler personally ordered that Bloch be protected, allowed to keep his belongings, and given special documents identifying him as a protected Jew. The second was Emil Maurice, Hitler's personal driver and bodyguard. When Himmler discovered that Maurice had a Jewish great-grandfather and tried to have him removed, Hitler completely ignored the SS racial laws and personally granted him an exemption as an honorary Aryan. 2 Jewish men lived because Hitler wanted them to. Millions of others died because Hitler wanted them to. The same person, the same hands, opposite decisions. Nazi Christmas. Christmas is one of the most beloved holidays in the world. But in Nazi Germany, not even Christmas was spared. Hitler's regime tried to eliminate the Christian and Jewish roots of the holiday, transforming it into a Germanic pagan celebration called Yule. Santa Claus was replaced by Odin, the Norse god who rode a white horse across the sky. Christmas carols were rewritten, removing every reference to Jesus and replacing it with lyrics celebrating nature and the Aryan homeland. Even the Christmas star was banned. The 6-pointed star was reminiscent of Judaism. The 5-pointed star was associated with the Soviet Union. In their place, families were encouraged to decorate the top of their tree with swastikas, sunwheels, or iron crosses. The official SS Christmas gift was the Juleuchter, a ceramic candle holder promoted by Heinrich Himmler and produced by prisoners at Dachau. Despite everything, most German families continued to celebrate Christmas in the traditional way. The regime could rewrite the carols and change the decorations. It could not change what people felt inside their own homes. Unity Mitford. In 1939, a British aristocrat went to a park in Munich and shot herself in the head with a pistol Hitler had given her as a gift. She survived, with the bullet still in her skull. Unity Mitford was one of the 6 Mitford sisters, one of the most famous aristocratic families in Britain. In the 1930s, she was so obsessed with Hitler that she moved to Germany with one single goal: to meet him. She succeeded. She became part of his inner circle, sat at his table, and accompanied him to his public appearances. Hitler called her his perfect English girl. When Britain declared war on Germany on September 3, 1939, Unity went to the Englischer Garten Park in Munich and shot herself in the head. She didn't want to choose between her country and the man she adored. She didn't die. Hitler personally visited her in hospital, paid for her treatment, and had her repatriated to Britain through Switzerland. Unity returned home on a stretcher with the bullet still lodged in her skull because surgeons couldn't remove it without killing her. She lived for another 9 years and died in 1948 from meningitis caused by that bullet. Amped Nazis. In May 1940, the German army swept through France in 6 weeks. Military analysts couldn't explain it. The answer was a pill. During the Second World War, the Nazis distributed millions of Pervitin pills to their soldiers. They called them tank chocolate and pilot salt. They allowed troops to stay awake for days, eliminated hunger, and provided the energy to march and fight without rest. It was a key element in the early military campaigns in Poland, France, and the Soviet Union. But Pervitin wasn't just for the military. Before 1941, it was sold freely in pharmacies and advertised as a miracle product capable of increasing the productivity of workers, students, and even housewives. The side effects were catastrophic: paranoia, hallucinations, permanent neurological damage, and complete addiction. Despite German authorities imposing some restrictions, the military kept distributing it because its immediate effects were considered too valuable on the battlefield. It wasn't military genius that swept through France in 6 weeks. It was a pill sold in pharmacies. Hitler was a drug addict. If the army was on methamphetamine, what was Hitler taking? Everything. Many people believe Adolf Hitler was always clear-headed and in full control. He wasn't. His personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, injected him with a cocktail of drugs for years. Methamphetamine before speeches, oxycodone before important meetings, cocaine drops for his nasal passages, testosterone, animal hormones, sedatives. Over 80 different substances in total. In the final years of the war, Hitler suffered from tremors, mood swings, and an obvious physical decline. The more the Third Reich collapsed, the more the doses increased. The man who demanded absolute discipline from millions of people was now completely dependent on drugs just to function. And in the bunker in April 1945, when drug supplies were cut off by Allied bombing, Hitler had a breakdown and fired Morell, screaming, "You have been giving me opiates this whole time. 9 years, 800 injections." And he only realized it at the very end. Lebensborn program. In 1935, Heinrich Himmler launched a program to breed human beings the way you breed animals, and nobody stopped him. The program was called Lebensborn, meaning spring of life. It was a network of secret maternity homes designed to produce pure Aryan children for the Reich. SS officers were required to father as many children as possible, married or not. Women who could prove their racial purity were invited to these homes to give birth, often to children fathered by married SS men they would never see again. Every child was taken by the state and baptized in a special SS ceremony in which lifelong oaths of Nazi loyalty were sworn on behalf of the newborn. During the war, the program became something even darker. It started kidnapping children, blonde-haired, blue-eyed children torn from their families across Poland, Ukraine, and Czechoslovakia, brought to Germany and raised as Germans. Many never knew the truth about where they came from. Around 20,000 Lebensborn children were born through the network. Most of them never knew who they really were. De-extinction projects. The Nazis didn't just want to purify the human race. They wanted to purify nature itself. In the 1930s, brothers Lutz and Heinz Heck, zoo directors and committed Nazi party members, launched a project to bring back the aurochs, an enormous wild bull extinct since 1627. The Nazis believed these animals represented the strength and purity of ancient Germany. With the full support of Hermann Göring, they traveled across Europe selecting cattle breeds they believed carried primitive aurochs traits and crossbred them over successive generations. They didn't manage to bring back the original aurochs, but they created something very similar. The so-called Heck cattle still exist today, direct descendants of that Nazi project. Then they did something even more unsettling. They released these animals into the Białowieża forest in Poland, the same forest from which the Nazis had just driven out the local population for German colonization. First, they emptied the forest of human beings. Then they repopulated it with animals recreated from scratch. Nazis invented Fanta, the second most famous drink in the world after Coca-Cola was invented by accident in a German factory during the Second World War. Nobody knows this. In 1939, the war made it impossible to import Coca-Cola syrup from the United States. Max Keith, head of Coca-Cola's German operations, refused to shut down. He worked with whatever wartime rationing allowed: apple fiber from cider presses, whey left over from cheese production, fruit scraps. He told his team to use their imagination to come up with a name. That is how Fanta was born, short for Fantasia. In 1943, 3 million cases were sold. Germans used it as a cooking ingredient, adding it to soups and stews to stretch their sugar rations. It wasn't a soft drink, it was a survival solution. When American troops liberated Germany in 1945, they found Keith still bottling Fanta in a half-destroyed factory. Today, Fanta is one of the most consumed drinks in the world. Born by accident in wartime from scarcity and the determination of a man who refused to give up. America Bomber. What if the Nazis had bombed New York? It wasn't just an idea. It was a real project that almost worked. The project was called the America Bomber. The goal was as simple as it was insane. Build a bomber capable of crossing the Atlantic Ocean, hitting New York and returning to Europe without stopping. German engineers spent years trying to overcome the enormous technical challenges. Several prototypes were designed and tested. According to some accounts, a test flight in 1944 brought an aircraft to within just 12 miles of Long Island before turning back. The project was never completed, mainly because Germany no longer had the time or resources needed as the war was turning against them. Had it entered service, it could have brought the Second World War directly to American soil. Fortunately for the Allies, the America Bomber remained nothing more than an ambitious Nazi dream. But here's the detail nobody mentions. The American B-2 Spirit, which entered service in 1997, bore a striking resemblance to the original America Bomber designs. Whether American engineers used captured Nazi blueprints remains officially unconfirmed.